Hey you guys, and welcome to this YouTube video, this YouTube page, Creational Codes. My name is Grace, and today we are talking about ego in the spiritual New Age communities. This is a huge conversation, you guys. It is one that is too massive for me to put into a 15 to 20 minute video, but I wanted to talk about it anyways because it's really, really important that we acknowledge ego in the spiritual space, because what it does is it takes away from our spiritual experience. It dilutes it, it in some ways inverts it, and we won't be able to have a true, honest relationship with God that is highly impactful, that is placing us upon our highest timeline when we are run by an ego or when we are run by an agenda or any sort of thing like that. So today, let's talk about ego. Let's talk about ego in the spiritual spaces, spiritual New Age communities. Shall we begin? So I did talk a lot about this in my last video. My last few videos have actually been vlogs, just because I have been changing and shifting a lot in my referencing to a lot of spiritual, practices that I've been doing for the last 4 to 5 years. My understanding of them is changing. My relationship to them is changing. And I didn't want to speak or teach when I was in such a big shift. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel integral. But after kind of going through the Christian rabbit hole for a month and a half, coming out on the other side, I feel such a deeper level of discernment in the spiritual spaces and also in Christianity. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I'm perfect, I have this, eagle-eye vision and everything is dark and bad and I know what's good. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying I have a level of understanding now that I did not have before, because of the way that I've kind of drifted and shifted through different phases of my spiritual evolution. But in my last video, I talked a little bit about some of the things I want to talk about today, which are the ego. The ego that we see in New Age spiritual communities, the guruship, the identity shifts, even the principles that make some people believe that they are equal to God or that they are God. And, there are very popular New Age teachers like Eckhart Tolle who kind of condone this behavior or this belief, Joe Dispenza, people like that who truly do believe that we are one. And I believe that we are one, but I don't believe that that equates that we are like God or that we are gods or miniature versions of gods on this planet. And I think that frequency creates a lot of freaking pride in a lot of gurus, a lot of teachers, a lot of coaches. Sorry, I just noticed my desk was like in the in the video. But yeah, we're gonna talk about some of those things, but also deeper topics like the starseed spaces, Kundalini, the culty kind of way that spiritual communities have shifted into this manipulation of the person so that they are fearful to leave their spiritual community and all the people and the teachers in that space, because they don't know what's going to happen to them when they leave it. There's a lot of outsourcing, external rootage, all that stuff, guys. So grab your drink, grab a journal if you want to, just sit with me, let's just talk. So the New Age spiritual communities are becoming culty. They are becoming extremely closed, circuited, godless. Like, I think that the teachers in the spaces believe that they themselves are God. I don't know what's going on. I've seen a lot of things where, and I'll just give some examples. So in some New Age spiritual community spaces, I've seen a lot of people change their names, proclaim that they are the, same bloodline as, ascended masters, that they themselves were these people in past lives, that this knowledge that they have through their bloodline and being deeply connected to these people, these ascended masters, gives them sacred knowledge. It makes them very, very powerful, and it kind of places this hierarchical experience where they then are the teacher and you then must be the student. obviously. If Buddha's teaching to you and he's, changed the world, you're going to sit there in astonishment. And if somebody's saying, oh, I am the descendant of Buddha, and they're saying it with so much confidence, and people truly believe these people when they say this. They are in astonishment, and they truly believe that this person must know more than I ever could. They have unlocked things that I never could. That is not true. Believing that somebody knows so much more than you, or that they are so much more powerful, so much more wise, that their connection to God is so much more potent than your connection to God is complete falsity. It is completely not true. And this specialness that we see so rampant in spiritual communities really needs to be purged. It needs to be released, and we need to move on from it, heal from it. Nobody is more special than somebody else. Nobody is more hierarchically, attuned to God, where in which they are better than you, or they are more superior to you. There's no such thing. In Christianity, actually, it is believed that the more humble you can get yourself, the more close you are to God. Jesus was so humble. Jesus was, just absolutely a servant to the world. There was no pride in his being. And yet in some spaces, we're now seeing so much pride, so much specialness, so much self-conviction of their own ideologies, that there's no room for truth, there's no room for Christ, there's no room for God. It's just them and their beliefs. We can see this really rampantly, definitely in starseed spaces. If you've been in starseed spaces, there's a lot of talk about multidimensionality, ascension timelines. Everybody's working to ascend, everybody's working to reach their avatar state. And I definitely do still believe that we are working through our physical ascension. I believe that the world is changing massively, constantly, and that we are getting closer to God. But I don't believe that there's really or should ever be any hierarchical frequency of, I'm on the 12th dimension and you're on this lower dimension. What does that even mean? We're all living on the same planet. And I think bigger than that, mindset and your heart being open or closed, your mind being perceptive or not, your body being sensitive or closed off, is really the experience that people are having. Our hearts are opening, we're expanding, we are growing. But it doesn't mean that because my heart's more open and I'm more sensitive to energy, and maybe I get downloads and visions and stuff, doesn't mean I'm on a much higher dimensional plane than Joe, and that, I'm vastly superior to him. That's not what that means at all. Or in my opinion, that's not what that should mean. That creates separation, that creates comparison, that creates an ego, that creates disillusionment between where we are and where we should be. And I also want to talk about the culty energy that is entering these starseed spaces. And this is also true for Kundalini, for Scientology, for a lot of different spiritual spaces, is that there is this cultish kind of mentality where you're kind of placed in a position where your language will start to change. You'll start to see the world differently. Realities and timelines and historical events that may or may not have happened are kind of being projected upon you. There's this need for agreeance. There's this need for compliance. There's this hierarchy placed on you. There is this specialness. There is this need to continuously grow, continuously heal, continuously ascend. There is also this great big fear of what happens if I left this community? What would happen to me if I stopped listening to this teacher? Who would I be? What would happen to me? Because we're then placed in a community that accepts us, loves us, validates us, pushes us further into that narrative. And when we leave it, we are at a disadvantage in society because society is not operating that way. We can't relate to people as well. We can't understand the way that other people are feeling as much. And this is a firsthand experience. Like, this was my experience when I was deep in these starseed community spaces. I believed that I was special and that I was, different. And I saw my family as not doing their work, as not, partaking in the ascension plan, as, maybe even being fallen, maybe even having like damaged DNA, all this stuff that they tell us. There's so much fear mongering. And the huge problem with this is that we're not giving it to God. We're not giving it to Christ or to Jesus Christ or to the one true living God. We ourselves are creating narratives and choosing to believe and create this separation between us and them, creating this separation, this wall of like, this is how I see the world, and the way you see the world is broken and damaged and false. And that is the way that a lot of people in these communities are operating, like truly, truly. And I'm sure the more I talk about this, you can understand how this would be dangerous. Like, there's separation, there's ego, there's pride. So many teachers in the Starseed, Lisa Renee, Ascension kind of space will do grid work and work in general. And then when world events happen, they will directly correlate the work that they did to the external God-made worldly events going on the planet. They will directly correlate that to their action. They will say, the reason that this is happening is because I prayed on it and God is showing the fruit of my labor. The reason that this is happening, the reason that there's all of these storms happening in this location is actually because I did a prayer last night and the earth is purging. Guys, like, how much ego is in that sentence? It's honestly astonishing. It's astonishing that people follow these teachers who say these things. Like, completely, God is not a thing. God is not like the reason that this is happening. I'm the reason that this is happening. What? And I truly do believe with communal mass prayer, we can change the planet. That with, communal and individual participation, prayer, miracles can happen. Yes, miracles can happen. But what kind of teacher, spiritual teacher, guru is going to take full responsibility and say, I did that? Me, I did that. You can thank me. We need to see the pride in these people. The pride in these people. The greatest virtue is humbleness. If you do an act of goodness, you don't need to share about it. That's between you and God. If you're making a prayer on something, do it in private. Do it in a way that is deeply personal. And I know I'm sharing this online, and some people are going to be like, why are you sharing your spiritual knowledge online if it's personal and all this stuff? But there's a very clear difference between the work I do and the work that some of these dangerous teachers are doing. I also want to always highly encourage people to not create external rootage, to not create a life in which you are devoted to somebody else as your passageway to God. Your passageway to God is within you. Your passageway to a liberated life is from within. It's you. It's you going inwards. I have worked with women and, in the past, they didn't know how to connect to themselves or go within. And this is the greatest work we can do. It's one of the greatest works I believe that we can do. And it's changed my connection to life in general, is find God, connect to God, and connect to your heart. and have that be your discernment and your attunement and your intuition and your instinct. Not what this person's saying, not what this person's saying. We take solace and support from everybody, but we find God within. God is not going to come to you from any teacher. God is going to come to you from within. From you finding God here. Not the teacher who knows so many magical, pretty sounding things, who works in the higher dimensions and says that she's, saving the planet and, portrays this false idea of her life. God is within you. God is within you. Let's quickly divert back to the ego. The ego in these spiritual spaces. The identity is a huge one we talked about. The godliness is a huge one we talked about. The, peer pressure and cultish ideologies and almost kind of principles that are secretly woven into these communities we talked about. I also want to quickly talk about purity and this need to be perfect and this need to be whole. And I know that this is a heavy weight on women, especially because as women, we feel the need to be good. We want to be, loved and seen. And sometimes we think that the best way for that to occur is to be perfect or to appease people or to appease God. And we feel like God is mad at us, or we feel like people around us are mad at us, or we feel like we've betrayed someone, or we feel like we just want to be good enough. And cultivating your relationship with God really is going to help you heal and know so deeply inside that you are loved, that you are worthy, that you innately are pure more than anything else. Because if we look at somebody else, a guru or a teacher who's telling us all this really advanced, quantum information or maybe starseed ascension information, and we believe that if we ascend high enough or if we get good enough at the technique, that we will finally be good with God or that we will finally meet God. Honestly and truly, keep it simple. You can find God in your body just by praying, talking to God, meditating on the body, going within, pleading to God that you may find him or her, whatever word feels better for you, that you may connect to God, that you may hear him in your body. That will be vastly more supportive for you in healing purity wounds, in feeling separate from God. So much more supportive than listening to whoever it is out there that you think is going to get you pure enough to be able to hear God. I'm going to leave below this really interesting podcast I listened to a few weeks ago from Medicine Stories podcast, and they did a whole conversation on German New Medicine, and this woman who basically got out of a cult and was reflecting on all of the ways that a cult convinces their members to stay in this rigid alignment of purity and goodness, and we're here to save the world, and it's us versus them, and it's black or white, and you can't leave, and all of this stuff. I've never practiced German New Medicine. It's a new fad. I don't know. But this conversation about cults specifically is really powerful. I'm going to leave that podcast down below. And if you're interested in kind of learning about the traits of a cult, learning about the traits of manipulation, I highly recommend it. And the women on this podcast said, and I can't agree more, they said that we are in the age of cults. We are in the age of cults. We are in the age of people teaching something with a lot of ego. When we tell God that we've got this, when we tell God that you can take a step back, God, I want this. Even when God's pulling you this way, no, I want this. God is going to take a step back. God is going to pull out and let you try it out for yourself. See how it goes. And every time we do that, when we fall to our knees, when we get sick, when the world starts crumbling down around us, we always go back to God. Because what is God? God is our Savior. God is our Creator. God is that mother or father figure that is always there for us. So don't think that you can do this without God. Don't think that you can do this because that teacher's so smart that they've met God for you and that they know everything. One of your biggest missions on this planet is to meet God in your body. I can say that almost certainly. I don't know how there could possibly be anything more important than meeting God in your body. I truly don't. And maybe that's just my experience. You can let me know in the comments down below, but like truly I don't see how there could be anything more important. And we go seeking everywhere, paying for all of these subscriptions and communities and teachers and events and retreats to find God when God is in your body. God is here, waiting for you, reaching out for you, wanting you more than anything. Can you give your life to God? Can you surrender into the experience of co-creating with God? It's not about being a obsolete slug of a being for God. It's not about not being a creative being or being expressionate. It's about living, knowing that God created you and that you probably at your core want nothing more than to meet God. And so just let that be your guiding light. Do it for God. Let God lead you. Can you surrender to God's plan over your own plan, knowing that God's plan far surpasses anything you could ever possibly imagine? More joy, more adventures, more bliss, more expression, more love, more wealth, more health, more family, more art, more delicious food, more adventures, more movement, more life experience, more of anything that you could ever possibly imagine that you think you want. God knows you. God knows you personally. He's not going to give it to you the way he's going to give it to Abigail. He's not going to give it to you the way he's going to give it to Jonathan. He's going to give it to you the way that you need it because God knows you. And when you give yourself to God, God is so ready to hold you. And I'm feeling so emotional about this because it's just so beautiful. It's the greatest love story of our lives. So all glory to God, always. And I thank you so much for watching. I know that this was, I've been a little bit all over the place with this channel and I'm finding my grounding, and I don't think I could have chosen a more interesting thing to talk about spirituality. It's anything else would have been more simple. But thank you guys for sticking around. Please subscribe if you liked this. Please let me know what content you're looking to hear about, what you're needing support in, how I can assist you, and what this served in your life, what this brought up for you, what's alive in your heart. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much.